I'm here with Ben Harman, and Ben and I met just a couple weeks ago, and the reason I noticed you right away is Ben's like the largest guy and most ripped guy at the gym.
Not the largest, but
definitely the most lean and chiseled and ripped, and so you know, I kind of noticed just watching you doing some of the lifts you were doing. I was like, man, this guy's got it really together. And then I saw you at work another time, and I thought, and then I started talking to you, and I really found out that you're really just a real nice guy too, and have really a neat story. So I thought it'd be good to be able to do a podcast and talk a little bit more about your nutrition and your health background, find out a little bit more about you and your journey in that. So that's what this is all about. So I'm grateful to have Ben, and thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Ben, just tell me a little bit about who you are, maybe a little about your background, where you're from, briefly.
Well, I originally was born in the Los Angeles area, but I grew up mostly in Colorado.
Okay.
And I grew up in a family that was very team sports focused, particularly basketball and football.
That's how my family was growing up.
And I was never particularly good at team sports. I enjoyed them, and I played them, of course, because that was the expectation in my family. But I never really felt like I completely fit, or that like I was finding my fire, anything to light my fire, and until I started running. And
so were you running cross country, or were you running track and field, or both?
Well, the original high school that I went to, cross country wasn't available. And so I tried track as a freshman and sophomore, and it was okay at that school, but then we moved, and I ended up in a different high school my junior and senior year, and there they had cross country and track, and they were just both such a positive experience for me, and I experienced some success, and so then I was like, yeah, this is it. So I started running.
Yeah.
At that point.
So when I was in high school, I played. I was football, basketball. I think I told you I played football at Utah State. That's how I paid for all my schooling and that.
Yeah.
But I also ran track. And when I was in the 9th grade, I set the school record in the mile.
Oh, wow.
It was 4:46 was my mile time in the 9th grade. But I can remember when I got into high school, I kind of stopped going the longer distance. I went back to the 800.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would run the 800, or when I'd run track just during the track season, I always found that I was much more disciplined than I was during the other seasons.
Yeah.
And my schoolwork was better, my grades were better, and I don't know if it was just because the discipline of just running every single day.
Well, I've coached track for a lot of years now as an adult, and I don't know, coaches always talk about, kids that run, it spills over into their other things. And so I think that's a general feeling in most people, is that I don't know if it's the running that inspires that or
So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but talk a little about when you run and you're running long distance like that, what happens to the body? I mean, I know that people experience runner's high. I've experienced that. What causes that, or how did you experience that?
Well, of course, that was one reason why I loved running, was because, you could go out on a run and feel great, because of the, as people refer to as the runner's high, but what that is the body releasing endorphins into the bloodstream, and those endorphins cause that, that feeling of
Euphoria.
Yeah, and so I was like that, but it was also, and I grew up in a difficult family, and I had friends at church, referring to adult friends at church, that would refer to me as the white sheep and the black. And so I don't know if that was really appropriate, but I got a lot of just difficult treatment at home, and so running was probably as much of an escape for me as it was anything else.
Yeah.
So.
Were you able to find some camaraderie with the guys that you were running with and that too?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like a brotherhood.
Yeah. With and I wish at that age that I had appreciated that more.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely had that with my cross country team, for sure.
Awesome.
And so I enjoyed doing that. But I was running with a running group outside of that formal team scenario, and there were older men in that group, which, you know, now I'm that age that they were at that time, and so it kind of bothers me to call them older men, but but they would talk about their knees and their hips and the issues associated with, you know, having put in years of running, and I would listen to that, and I would think to myself, I don't want to sound that way when I'm that age.
Right.
And so I started looking into other things to do besides just running, and I landed on triathlon, and I thought, wow, this would be awesome because it's cross training, and so I can, you know, 2 of the 3 disciplines, I'm not going to be, you know, killing my joints.
Right.
You know, be non-weight bearing exercise. So that would be great. So that's when I went into triathlon.
And you told me this earlier, but you ended up doing like 50 triathlons?
I did, yeah. I had, you know, I had a 2-year hiatus because I went on a mission, and I think I had one companion out of 10 that would do any kind of exercise.
Know what that's like?
Yeah. And so I did at age 21. I started my running again, and that was when I got into triathlon. And then I had a roommate that said, "Hey, let's go to the gym one day," and I'm like, "Okay, great." So, and I had, you know, messed around with weights in high school like most high school kids do.
Yeah.
You know? So we went, and I don't know, but I caught the fire.
You just loved it.
And I was like, oh, I love this. Yeah. So that was the rest. That was history. That's when I started seriously training.
So at age 21.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of a little bit later than I think
is,
some people get into it.
Yeah.
You know, I was telling you, I played football and that growing up, and so the gym for me, I think my dad started me probably like when I was in the 5th or 6th grade. It may have been too early.
Right.
But I was, you know, lifting weights and not heavy weights, but yeah, that's, a lot of people just see it as work. Why do you say you love it so much? What is it about that you like?
And some people see it as work, and other people see it as a waste of time, which that one really annoys me. But that was the family I grew up in, and so I mean, there was nobody exercised in the family I grew up in, and you know, and just to go back to that for a second, that when I started running at 15, and I would run every day, I mean, I caught flack from my family on a daily basis for doing that. My dad always worked out of town, and he was always out of town for weeks at a time or months at a time. And when my older siblings were older, and then sometimes my mom and me and my younger sister would go on road trips, and whenever that happened, there was every day that we were on the road driving, she would have to, because I would basically demand it, she would have to allow an hour of travel time where I was running on the side of the freeway while she drove about that speed, kind of off to the side.
Wow.
So I could get my run in.
Wow. So your mom's supportive. But
yeah, so to think that my mom did that for me is just amazing, because I'm not sure I would do that for one of my kids.
Yeah. So you were talking about your family wasn't very supportive, except for your mom. In what ways was your family? I mean, what they do? How are they not supportive of your training?
Well, at age 15, when I started running, I did it because of this second high school that I went to. The cross country coach and the track coach was the same guy, and I just idolized him. So everything he said was like God was speaking. And so he said, for example, stop, he told all of us as a team, he said, stop drinking soda. So
Which is hard for kids.
Yeah, but I did. And
Yeah.
that was the last day I ever drank soda. And
have you drinking soda since?
well, since then, probably on a New Year's Eve.
Oh, wow. Huh.
If it was in the punch. but no, I don't drink soda at all. And he's responsible for that, you know, and just things that he would teach me and say, I did them. And so
it's kind of the importance of having a mentor early on, somebody who teaches you and guides you, and that's why coaches are so important. Yeah.
The family I grew up in, nutrition was not a priority, and my dad was very much meat and potatoes, and we lived on a ranch in Colorado. We butcher our own cattle, so we had our own meat, and
hopefully grass fed.
Yeah. And and so I started to adapt some of the things that I was eating to make them more healthy, and I started to eat very nutritiously, and I started learning what I needed to eat, and every single day it was a negative experience with my siblings, because they would just give me the worst time about doing that, and it came to the point where it was considered that I considered myself better than the rest of them.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of negative stuff directed at me, both verbally and physically.
Wow.
And so I just lived for the day when I turned 18 and could leave.
Could go and get out.
Yeah.
I think that happens so often where you're starting to better your life. You found something that you love in running, and your nutrition is on point. And I think a lot of times you probably heard this analogy where the crab analogy. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Where
I'm not sure.
Okay, well I'll just tell you real quick, and then we'll get back to you. But what is when crabs are caught in a bucket in the ocean, how they do it is they set up the bucket, or they set up the trap, and they put just a little tiny bit of crab food at the bottom, just enough for one crab. Well, what happens is eventually one crab will crawl in and start nibbling at the food. And when that happens, other crabs that are around will see that, hey, there's food over there, this crab's getting it, so they start to gravitate towards what's going on with those crabs. Well, eventually the bucket is filled with crabs and there's no food at all. The food's gone. So the whole reason that they went there is completely gone.
Yeah.
And then what will happen is crabs, they're all in this bucket, and some of them will try to start escaping and getting out. Crabs will literally pull the other crabs back in the bucket because they don't want them to change and be different from the whole entire group.
Oh, wow.
So much so that crabs trying to escape have had legs and limbs ripped off, they've shown, of other ones pulling back in. So when these crabbers, I don't know what you call them, but when they pull these buckets of crabs, they're just filled with crabs out of the ocean, and they only had to use just a tiny little bit of food. And it's just because of the mentality. So the reason I share that analogy is I think, there's a lot of people that are out there that are like that, where they say, hey, somebody's doing something different with their life that's bettering their life, and to make themselves feel better, they may have a limiting belief, and so to make themselves better, they try to pull other people down. And it sounds like that was kind of what was going on in your household even. And sometimes it's hard when it's brothers and sisters too.
Yeah. And it was that's an interesting analogy. I think it definitely is applicable.
Okay, so we talked about your running days, and then you started to touch into your love for bodybuilding, or at least just getting into the weight room. And you talked about you got into triathlons to take some of the pain off the joints, and you did 50 triathlons, which is absolutely amazing. But during the same time as you're doing triathlons, you're also going to your weight training.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that, because that is not the normal, I guess, combination. A lot of people will, at least from what I understand, what I've been told is people who run long distances, they do these triathlon events, getting into the weight room can almost, some people think, be counterproductive.
Right. Yeah, no, there's definitely, there's definitely that feeling and that attitude, and you can even read it in the literature. But I really, in my own personal opinion, and I've always felt this way, and even as a trainer, as a personal trainer, I have taught my clients that you can do both types of training. In fact, you should. You know, I've told other triathletes, I've told runners, I've told all of those people who engage in the kinds of sports that traditionally don't use a weight room, that you should be in the weight room. I don't tell them to do what I do, because I wouldn't expect anyone to do what I do. But, and, you know, I wouldn't, and I can only do what I do because I've been building up to it over
years
since I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and, but every athlete, regardless of their sport, can benefit from strengthening the muscle. It's a very common conversation when I have a client, when I'm meeting with a client for the first time, and my first question is, you know, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And we talk about that, and then one of my next questions is, how much time are you willing to dedicate to reaching your goals? Because that's going to determine how quickly you get to your goals. Okay? The less time you're willing to commit, the longer it's going to take you to get to your goals. The more time you're willing to commit, the sooner you're going to get there. And so it's very common for people to respond, well, you know, I don't have a lot of time, I'm busy. And the thought that goes through my head is, yeah, well, we're all busy.
Yeah.
We all have a lot to do. It's a matter of how are you going to allocate your time?
Yeah. It takes commitment. I mean, you wake up at 4:30 every morning and you're at the gym. I mean, that's commitment.
Yeah. Well, most of the time I've had a key to whatever gym I've worked out at, because it's either been a school gym where I teach school, or it's been like there was a time where I was the vice president of the YMCA, so obviously I had keys. You know, there's a time where I was the general manager of a Gold's Gym, so obviously I had keys. You know, so I could go anytime I wanted. Yeah. You know, but so it's hard for me when I'm like my current situation where I'm just another boss member, and I have to stand there and drum my fingers while I'm waiting for the person to open the door in the morning. You know. Yeah. But yeah, so for years I got up at 4 a.m. to go work out at 4:30, so I could do my entire workout, not only prior to work, but also prior to the time that anyone in my family was awake. So it didn't take away from, you know, family time. Yeah. And that's how I've done it over the years. But it's amazing. But anyway, so to get back to what I was talking about, which was what you're gonna tell me.
So this is going really good. But the discussion we were talking about earlier was, you know, people sometimes don't have commitment and time.
And so,
so the best time to start is today. It's actually yesterday, but let's get
exactly.
going today.
Yeah. Awesome. But you know, to give older people hope, one of my favorite studies is a study that they did, a 6-week study on resistance training with centenarians, you know, which are people that between 90 and 100 years old. So all the test subjects were in a nursing home, and they put them on a 6-week resistance training program, which for you and me, that program would look like, are you kidding me? You want me to do what with this little tiny elastic band? You know? But for these people, I mean, that it was definitely a challenging program for them to do, but it was something that they could do. Right. You know, and all the subjects in the study, without exception, had a significant limitations on their quality of life. I mean, being in a nursing home is a limitation on their quality of life. But you know, they had to walk with canes or with walkers, or they couldn't get up out of their chair without the nurse getting them up. You know, they had to push a button whenever they needed to go to the bathroom. so someone could help them go, take them and help them go to the bathroom. I mean, just things I hope I never am in that situation, personally. But these people, I mean, there was obviously some attrition in the study. It wasn't because of the study, but it was because these are people between 90 and 100 years old.
Sure.
So everyone that lived till the end of the study, without exception, had a significant increase in their quality of life.
Wow.
Which, was not having to use the cane anymore, but being able to walk without the cane, or going from the walker to a cane, or going from not being able to get up out of the chair to being able to get myself up out of the chair.
Even at that late of an age. That's incredible.
Even at that late of an age. So the point is it's never too late to start, but it's always better to start early.
What have you found to be the balance for you anyway on in the weight room versus your nutrition, your sleep, all that kind of stuff? Because I know all of them play a key component.
Right.
Let's first talk about your nutrition.
Okay.
I've never asked you that, so I'm kind of curious to find out. It sounds like you don't drink soda.
No.
What else about your diet? What do you do? What do you follow?
Well, I'm just going to start off with a qualifier that I'm probably not the best example of nutrition, but I do try to eat healthy. For example, if I make an omelet, I'll use anywhere from half a dozen to the entire dozen of eggs.
Really?
Yeah, and I have been told that I should not do that. but I say, you know what, I'm going to do that.
So is your biggest meal breakfast then? Is that typically or?
No, it would be if I wasn't so rushed trying to get from my training to my job.
Yeah.
But I do make sure I eat breakfast. And I have a small refrigerator in my office, and I have food in my office, and I eat throughout the day.
So, some people are eating 5-6 meals, you're probably eating that at minimum, it sounds like.
For sure, yeah. And I do that for physiological reasons as well as for emotional reasons, because if I don't eat every hour and a half, I get hangry. Yeah. So just to stay in a good mood, I need to make sure that I'm eating regularly.
Yeah.
But in my body, I mean, I have a very high metabolism. With turning 50 next month, my metabolism is still very high.
Yeah.
And
part of that has to be because you're training too.
Yeah. And so I have to pack in the calories.
Yeah.
Especially with bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to lose mass.
So you eat often. What types of foods do you put in the body?
So my list really is meat, fruit, vegetables, dairy, nuts and seeds. Those are the things that I try to eat. And then within each of those categories, then I try to be, as intelligent as I can be about the nutrition. So obviously white meat, like poultry and fish is healthier than red meat, and there was quite a long time period, mainly when I was running and doing triathlon, where I stayed away from red meat almost entirely.
Wow.
But I changed my thinking on that, because the thinking in nutrition, as in any other field of study, changes over time.
Absolutely.
And people find different things, and if you're not talking about absolute truth, but you're talking about what's true as it relates to what we understand about, in this case, the human body, then obviously our thinking develops over time and things can change slightly. And so in terms of just meat, and that subject of meat, I don't really subscribe to the idea that you should completely eliminate red meat from your diet. Yeah, and you know, and then I can just do, like in food preparation, there's a lot of things I can do, you know, that I can take the time to do.
Yeah.
I can cut the fat off the meat. I can, like with ground beef, after it's fried up, I'll run it under hot water.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, in a strainer, and just let all the fat drain out of it, you know.
Yeah.
And does that mean all the content is gone? No, but I've gotten rid of a lot of it. And so it's a much lower content.
Yeah.
And then, like, my favorite meat is sausage.
So good.
And I denied myself of sausage for years. And then I got to this point where I said, you know what? I am not denying myself of sausage anymore. You know, I'm going to eat sausage.
That's so good.
But I don't have to eat sausage every day.
Sure.
You know, and that's one of the things I think that, you know, is a benefit that a person can create for themselves when they exercise significantly over time. Is they can create a body that is so healthy that it can manage, you know, taking in something that's maybe not perfect nutrition once a week, or, you know, once or twice or 3 times a month or whatever, you know. So like sausage, I'll eat sausage. Typically that's my Sunday morning thing. You know, I don't eat it on any other day, but I eat it on Sunday morning. And, you know, it's kind of like the idea of a cheat day, you know. The body can deal with that when it's not your regular daily diet.
Right.
And you can do things like with the sausage, I do the same thing I do with ground beef. After it's fried up, I'll just sit there and, you know,
get rid as much of the fat or the toxins you can. Yeah.
Run the water over it, whatever, and get rid of as much of the fat as I can. Exactly.
So it sounds like the things that you've really cut out of your diet are mostly, you know, because I didn't hear you say breads and grains, and I think most people are starting to understand that more, how bad, you know, processed or carbohydrates can be to the body. It doesn't sound like you put in a lot of sugar, which is another thing that is one of the worst things for you. But so.
Well, on breads and grains, I've never been an advocate of low carb diets, because...
Well, back in our day, early on, it was almost the exact opposite, right? Especially if you're a runner, you eat spaghetti before a run.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, I think carbohydrate intake is extremely important, especially as an athlete. And I think people hurt themselves when they cut carbohydrates, generally because they cut them too far.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of, you know, when you're talking about your macros, what percentage of my diet is going to be protein, what percentage is going to be carbohydrate, and what percentage is going to be fat. And, you know, there's 100 different opinions on that, right? But when I'm talking to athletes, I generally go with 40, 30, 30. And so carbohydrate intake is 40% of your
Wow.
diet.
Okay.
And so, but then we talk about what kind of carbohydrates are we intaking. And obviously you want to go with complex more than simple. You know, and as much simple carbohydrate as you can cut out, great. You know, that's what you should do, and focus on complex carbohydrates. But then,
what's some examples of complex carbohydrates?
Well, like, you know, let's say like multi-grain bread as opposed to white bread. You know, and so it's just a matter of really, for most people, it's a matter of tweaking the type
what they're buying,
of item that they're buying and consuming. But then, you know, like for me personally, as I've gotten older, as I've aged over years, it's been a process, almost an unnoticeable process, but I got to the age where I started to notice that bread just, I used to consume lots of bread, especially when I was running.
So did I.
Yeah, but I started to notice as I was getting older that I just felt bloated all the time. And I finally, I have two daughters actually, that I had to deal with being gluten intolerant. And as I watched them manipulate their diets to try to be comfortable and happy and feel good all the time, then I started thinking, well, maybe I need to eliminate some of this bread intake.
Yeah.
And as I did that, and that was not an easy thing to do in our American society. That is really hard. So I sympathize with anybody who's trying to do that.
Yeah.
But you just find other things to eat, and you eat more fruit, or you eat more vegetables, or you eat more, like something else, and as I've done that, I definitely feel better, and I don't feel bloated. And there's just so many things, so many issues that have come up in nutrition just because of our food system, our food processing system, and everything. And it's just, it can be a difficult thing to manage.
My wife is gluten intolerant, and so when we go to restaurants or when we go out, we have to really watch, what she's ordering and that. And she does it because it, like you were saying about your daughters, it makes her feel just horrible and just sick if she eats the wrong thing. But as a side effect, she is thin, like almost no body fat. Right. And she strength trains now, and so she does have, she gets protein and all that, and she looks great. But that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about protein as far as, do you use protein shakes and all that too?
Yes, I do.
What's your favorite kind of protein?
Well, I use whey protein, and you can get more specific than that, obviously. I mean, whey isolate is better than whey concentrate as far as the absorption, the amount of absorption that you get into your blood system, and then they have hydrolyzed whey isolate and all of that. So, if you're going to supplement, the one thing that one of the things I tell people is you need to become educated about what you're supplementing with, because it's not inexpensive, and you want to make sure that your money is, you're getting your bang for your buck.
Yeah.
You don't want to be buying something that is basically being sloughed off by the body.
Yeah.
Because that's like throwing your money away. So, but I use a scoop of whey isolate before my training session, and then I use another scoop right after, and then
just one scoop though? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe where I'm messing up, I'm usually like 2 to 3 scoops before.
Well, for most of those tubs of protein, the serving size is 2 or 3 scoops. And basically all I'm doing is I'm breaking up the serving. I'm taking half the serving before and half after. And I just do that. I mean, if money was no issue to me, I would do the full serving, which is 2 or 3 scoops, whatever it is. I would do that before and I would do that after, but I'm just trying to supplement, but still stay in my budget as much as I can.
It's great.
But and then I use casein protein at night before I go to bed.
And that's so that your body can build muscle or recover throughout your sleep. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And I mean, whey protein is absorbed by the body very quickly, which is why you would use that before and after your workout. Casein is a slow release protein, and so when you take that before you go to bed at night, then it's releasing into your system all through the night, so you can maximize that recovery process.
Yeah.
So that's why I do that. I never supplemented. I started seriously bodybuilding at 21. I did not I didn't use a single supplement until I was 40.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think I actually might have used creatine a few times before I was 40. But yeah, I didn't really start, and that was mainly because just family financial circumstances, just trying to meet the family budget and trying not to have that be a burden on the budget.
Yeah.
But once I turned 40, I was like, I've been struggling financially long enough, and this is something I'm gonna do. It's gonna work. I'm gonna make it work somehow.
Yeah.
Because I've sacrificed it long enough, and I'm ready to supplement. And part of that was because, I was, and this is not to be taken as a significant thing in any way, but I was noticing that it was taking me a little longer to recover. So I assumed that was due to just, age.
Yeah.
And it takes, your recovery process is a little longer maybe when you're 40 than it is when you're 20.
Yeah, sure.
And so
I've noticed that now.
yeah. And so I'm like, well, I'm still getting up every morning and do the same training I've been doing, so I need to make sure that my recovery is adequate so I can do that. And so if supplements are going to help me recover better, then I'm going to use supplements, And I've always told people that I'm like, I am in no way against supplementation, and there are people that are. We know that. I just think that you want to be smart about supplementing. You want to know why you're supplementing. You want to know that there's a valid reason for it, so that when you're spending your money, you feel good about, the fact that you're spending your money.
Right.
That there's a good reason for that.
Yeah. Have you noticed a difference though since the time you started doing supplements versus, you said you didn't do it up until you were 40?
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference, like you've built muscle quicker or?
It's hard to say because it's so convoluted with so many different variables, because when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, and I wasn't supplementing, I don't know what the difference is between being that age and being this age and not having supplemented and now supplementing. It's just hard to say that, because also part of that was, in that mix was also the fact that I was doing all of that endurance training, swimming and biking and running, because I was doing triathlon while I was doing the bodybuilding type training.
You were burning a ton of calories.
Yeah. In fact, I don't even do 3 times a week for 20 minutes on a treadmill like you see a lot of bodybuilders do, to try to help cut fat, for a competition. Yeah. I don't do that, because if I do that, I lose mass. I start losing mass, my body just starts sloughing it off. And so, which is one of the reasons why I superset, and you referred in the very beginning to, I seem to work out fast and I keep going. And part of the reason I do that is because, I get that cardio benefit from my heart rate never going down, because I'm going, like on chest and back day, I'm going from my chest set to my back set, to my chest set to my back set, to my chest set to my back set, until I'm done with that routine. Then I move on to the next routine and I do the same thing. And so that's why, supersetting is a great bodybuilding principle, but I also do it for that reason.
Yeah. Okay, so now going to back to the weight room, because you talked a little bit about that, and so when I've watched you work out at the gym, you are going from routine to routine to routine, but you do some of the lifts just a little bit different than I think, what people would say is the standard lift.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, it seems like you're getting your whole body into some of the lifts too, and it's just talk about how you lift, maybe some of the things that you do that you've learned that work for you.
Right. That's an excellent question. I'd love to talk about that, because I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand. Well, I know it is, because I have people come up to me in the gym all the time and say, could you tell me why you're doing that way? Because you obviously look like
you're ripped.
You know what you're doing. Yeah. So, but I don't understand why you're doing that way. So, and as I've said, I've been a trainer since 1993, and I've trained a lot of people that they've never been in the weight room in their life. So I've trained beginners. So with a beginner or an intermediate lifter, they're always going to be taught by me to go through a full range of motion on an exercise, and they're going to do the exercise in the standard way that you would see it in the textbook or whatever book. or
Yeah.
Arnold's,
Sure.
lifting book or whatever it is you're looking at, because it's important that a person builds a foundation of lifting exactly the way that they're supposed to lift. The quote-unquote perfect technique, going through the full range of motion from start to finish. You need to
really isolating that of whatever muscle group they're working on.
Yeah, you need to build. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not when they're doing like alternate dumbbell curls standing. I'm going to teach them to really isolate. Well, they're not isolating the muscle, but really, go through the full range of motion and just use a heavy enough weight that they're challenged for the number of reps that they're doing, but they don't. But it's not so heavy that they have to move their shoulder into it to get it to come up or whatever, But with an advanced lifter who's already understands all of that and has done that and has that foundation, we're gonna start to do some other kinds of things that a person can do because they understand that they're not throwing their technique out the window, but they're actually using the exercise in a different way that can help them go beyond the foundation that they've built. So for example, I've had a lot of people come up to me and ask, why, when you do the incline bench press, why do you only come down to here and not all the way to your chest? And so, part of that is because a lot of it has to just do with the construction of the shoulder girdle on an individual. Same thing with shoulder press. Okay? I've learned over time, and you really don't know this as a beginning lifter or even as an intermediate lifter, but when you come to the point where you can call yourself an advanced lifter and you've got, however many years that is under your belt, there's something else you have acquired, which is the ability to read your body and to understand your body. Mm-hmm. And that is a very individual thing. And you have to understand, what your shoulders can do mechanically and what range they can move through mechanically. And so I've learned over the years that when I'm doing the shoulder press and I bring it down, I can bring it down behind my head. But if I do that after doing that for a few weeks, I'm going to have pain in my shoulders. And so instead I bring it down
in your
to the front,
joints,
right?
Type of a thing, yeah.
So instead I bring it, and some people can do that and it's no big deal, and then they'll never have that pain. But I always bring it down in front of my face, and I bring it down to about right here. And that's because if I go any farther down over time, I'll have pain in my shoulders, in my shoulder joints. And I've learned that. And so I don't bring it all the way down and bounce it off my chest because I don't want to have pain in my shoulder joints.
You want to do this long term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I have a book in my library that talks about this very thing, and that you have to, you need to learn your body, you need to learn what your body can do, and you need to do your exercises appropriately. So, and it's the same thing with like squatting, like the way a person's lower body is constructed. Mm-hmm. They may not be able to squat flat-footed without causing injury or low back pain or something, and so they put weights underneath their heels. Because some people need to do that, other people don't. It has to do with just the construction of their body, the length of their legs, and different things. And so the same thing with like the bench press, where my reps look more like half reps than full reps. And again, part of that is just because of my shoulders.
I think a lot of times in gyms too, you'll see that there's a lot of pride, meaning, men will go in there and they're thinking, okay, I want people to look at me because of how much weight I'm lifting, versus, and I, in seeing you, you lift a lot of weight, but at the same time, you're in there and you look great. Where sometimes, guys will be in there and they're throwing, 150, 200 pound dumbbells, but they don't look good,
right.
And so I think most of us go to the gym because we want to try to improve our appearance, our physique, and all that kind of stuff.
Even so, those who say that's not the reason, they're lying.
That's the reason, yeah. So it's not always about how much weight can I lift, how much weight can I throw around. It's like what you're doing, and I appreciate you saying that you're going from one lift to the next, and you're burning calories throughout the whole time, and then when you are doing your lifts, you're doing it so that you can be, at this long term and save the body and save the joints and things like that. So
yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up that point, because I think that's an important thing for people to understand. And I think if you're doing bodybuilding training, you have to get over the ego.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Of what's the other guy doing, because it doesn't matter what the other guy's doing. I mean, I've laid down on a bench press many times, and there's another guy on the bench press next to mine, and he's got 3 plates on each side, or even 4 plates on each side, and I've got 2. And I mean, I don't care. There was a time when, that bothered me a little bit. I'm like, dang. But I've lived long enough at this point that I don't care. That's awesome. Good job. More power to you, dude.
Yeah, but in most cases, you look better than that other person.
And that's the thing, is just because of the different types of advanced lifting techniques that you can do that are used by most, if not all, bodybuilders, are going to require you to go with lighter loads.
Yeah.
Because you can't do a lot of those techniques with those really heavy loads. But the result is so much better.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you a couple questions just about consistency, if we can. So, how much sleep do you typically get? That's sometimes very difficult for people, but how much sleep do you usually get?
Sleep is I am an advocate for sleep, and I've always been really adamant about sleep with my clients, with the high school kids that I teach PE to, and the athletes that I've coached over the years. And high school kids are the worst for getting sleep, And I mean, I would harp on my running athletes just, over this issue all the time, because I knew they weren't going to bed till 2 a.m. and getting up at, 7 so they could be at school at, or getting up at 7:25 so they could be at school at 7:30. So, but yeah, I mean, 7 to 9 hours of sleep without no argument. If you're not getting at least 7 hours of sleep, you're messing up big time when it comes to your recovery. And that's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for busy people to get that much sleep, but you got to make that commitment, because your body has got to have. And the difference between sleeping 7 or 8 hours every night, and if you can get 9, awesome. But the only time I can ever get 9 is on the weekend. But during the week, on a good night I can get 8. Most nights I get 7. But the difference between even 7 hours a night versus one of those bad nights when, you just didn't, whatever, work issues, family issues, whatever, and you got in bed late, you still had to get up at the same time the next morning, and it was a total of 5 hours of sleep. The difference in the gym is absolutely huge.
Yeah, it affects everything. You talked about your recovery, but your entire day is thrown off.
Yeah.
You don't have the energy
and I mean, just talking about your workout itself, just within that workout, it's dragging myself through the workout versus going through the workout feeling great. And it's getting through the workout hoping that I don't walk out of the gym with a pulled deltoid or something, versus walking out of the gym, you never have anyone worrying about pulling a muscle and you feel great and your muscles feel great and whatever. And so I mean, that your body has got to have that sleep, and just the sleep cycle itself. Your body is working while you're sleeping, and it's working on that recovery, and that's the whole point of sleep. That's what it is to regenerate and rejuvenate the body and make it ready for another day, and make it capable of functioning at an optimal level on another day.
Yeah.
And when you cut that short, then you don't do that.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't do that. And, the hormones, the growth hormone and all of that happens during the sleep cycle, you got to have that full cycle in order for that. And that's why they say, people say, well, where do you come up with 7 to 9 hours a night? And who came up with that? How do you know? Well, that's based on the amount of time it takes for your hormones to do their thing through the night. And so you got to have at least 7 hours in order for that full process to take place.
And I think where most people probably struggle with that is something that you've been able to master is consistency in other areas of your life. And one of the big reasons most people don't go to sleep is they have the TV on or they have electronics on. So you said you don't watch TV. That makes it easier for you to be able to probably go to bed at night.
Exactly, yeah. And these days, it's turning your phone off or putting your phone where you can't grab it or whatever, It's just, other types of electronics is just being able to manage that instead of having the electronics manage you.
So what time do you try to be in bed every night by?
Well, now because the gym I go to now doesn't open until 5, then I can get up at 4:30 instead of 4. So if I count back 8 hours, I need to be in bed by 8:30, right? So, but I seldom can get in bed by 8:30. There are nights where I can get in bed by 8:30, but it can be difficult.
It's good to know you're human because I struggle with the same thing.
So I try to always be in bed by 9:30 without fail, because 9:30 to 4:30 is 7 hours. So I try to get at least that 7 hours.
What about a person, say now you said you're 49 going on 50 next month, and you're doing competitions and physique shows and things like that. I'm going to ask this for personal reasons. I want to get into some of that stuff.
Cool.
I'm going on 40 in about a month.
Okay.
No, 39. I can't remember my age. 39. I'll be 39 in about a month. What is it? What have you found? Is this your first show you've done, or are you going to be? How many shows have you done?
No, I did. I didn't start doing bodybuilding shows until, in my heart of hearts, I've always been a bodybuilder.
Sure.
Right. That's why I always did the training, even when I was doing the triathlons.
Yeah.
But I did triathlon competition because there's this part of me that wants to compete.
Absolutely.
I love competition.
That's me.
I love it. It's just part of the fire that burns in me, and but my wife has never been supportive at all of
really?
bodybuilding, competition. So
that makes sense.
part of the reason why I did triathlon competition was because I needed a competitive outlet, and I wanted to honor my wife's feelings.
Oh, that's great.
Even though what I really wanted to do was, So I did that. Anyway, so I said before that I think I said before, maybe I didn't, but when my 2 oldest daughters started going to college and they started draining my pocketbook with expenses for this and expenses for that, whatever, I was like, man, I can't afford to race, And so I stopped racing. And when I did that, I was like, I'm not going to go out and do 2 or 3 swims a week and 2 bike rides a week and a run or 2 every week, and all this time that I'm putting into that if I'm not going to race. And I'm like, what I really love is being in the gym. So I'm just going to that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to really, and that was when I increased my time in the gym a little bit, because I had more time, because I wasn't doing all that endurance training. And I'm like, man, I'm going to go for it. And when I told some of the people that I saw at the gym on a regular basis I was going to do them, they're just like, oh my God, finally! What made you change your mind? What are you doing? And I was like, you know what? I just realized that I'm going to be 50 in a year. I mean, now it's a month away, but at that point it was in a year. And I'm like, I'm not going to get younger. I mean, I'm just going to be getting older. I love this. I've always wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I might as well do it, What about your wife? Well, I guess she'll just deal with it. and so yeah, when I told my wife that I was going to do the competition, of course it was not a happy conversation, but
yeah,
with the support of her brother,
it went okay.
It was enough that made her just kind of back off a little bit. And so I did my first one last June.
Wow.
And then I did one in August. And so I've done two. So I'll do my third one either the Utah Cup in March, which is an NPC show here in Salt Lake, or I'll do the FitCon in April. That'll be my next one. Either one, but not one of those.
So now doing the competitions, do you change your routine leading up to it, or do you pretty much do the same?
I don't. That's typically what
that's what most people
competitor
do.
would do.
Yeah.
I don't.
Huh.
I don't change anything. And it's, and this is...
Which is great. Let me just say that, sorry, one thing, because I noticed some people will bulk up and mass up and they got a lot of extra weight. And then right before the competition, they cut. And so then they're then they look great when they're on stage. And then the next week, it's all of a sudden it's like a different person.
Yeah.
You look great all the time.
Well, this is hard to address because I have this this attitude that an athlete can always live in the state of being ready to compete. I mean, I used to I try to tell my wrestling coaches this all the time, and some of them get it and some of them don't, because traditionally when you're coaching wrestlers, you're deciding which weight class you're going to put each wrestler in, and then you're on their back to get them to cut weight to make that class.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're not doing anything, at least in my experience, most wrestling coaches do nothing to try to get those kids to learn to live on a nutrition plan that would just have them always ready to compete. So when it comes time for the competition, they don't have to go in to the weight room with, 10 pairs of warm-ups on
and sweat it out.
Ride the bike until they lose enough sweat that they can make weight, right? Which means they go out on the mat dehydrated, which means their performance is, and it's I realize it's a long-term approach. I realize that it's taking the long view and that your wrestler's not going to be where you want them to be immediately. But if you could teach that kid to eat right and train, train the way he needs to train, then maybe he could be in that weight class. He's just solidly right there in the middle of that weight class, and he doesn't have to cut weight.
And then when he's wrestling on the mat, he's his best self.
He's wrestling on the mat, his performance is where it should be, and and everything. And it's kind of the same idea with bodybuilding. I think the reason why people people bulk up because they want to get additional size, but then they have to cut because they've got a lot of unwanted fat and unsightly fat. It's obviously you're not going to win out there on stage with that fat on your body, so then they've got to cut, and then they feel absolutely horrible for, whatever period of time
Yeah.
leading up to that competition.
It's so funny you say that because I see videos and pictures of people, right after the competition's done and they're going to buy the Big Mac and the drink and the fries and they're like, oh, it's like I've been starving myself from this for so long and now I get to go do it. Well,
and I think there's some of the same of that in bodybuilding, but I don't want to make it sound as simple as I might be making it sound, because I think in my case some of it's genetic as well. But Arnold talks quite at length about it in his bodybuilding Bible, and he advocates the same idea that if you're eating the way you should be eating all the time,
you're always ready.
There's not going to be such a huge process of having to bulk up and cut and do all of that, And so I think for people that can create that lifestyle, I think it can be a less dramatic experience to do that.
It sounds like it can be something that's more long-term too.
Right. Exactly, and there are those guys that want to try a bodybuilding competition and they do it and they have such a horrible experience with that process of cutting that they just never want to do it over again. And to me, that's kind of sad, because if that was managed better, if they'd had the direction, that maybe it wouldn't have been such a negative experience, and they want to keep competing.
Okay, well, Ben, I appreciate this time. You've shared a lot of incredible insight and stories and experiences that you've had, and it's just a wealth of knowledge. So really appreciate it. And on a personal level, I just seeing you and what you do, I look up to what you've been able to create in your life. It's pretty amazing.
Appreciate that.
On top of that, being a husband and a father, which it takes a lot of time and energy and effort and work in itself, and struggle, to make a living and everything that goes along with that. So appreciate your time, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good to see you on stage.
Okay, I'll be there. Thank you.